try unmuting myself. Hey, good evening.
Oh,
Hello, people.
Good to see you, Jerry.
hi, Myra.
Hello, Mara.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Good. Just trying to figure out figure out little idiosyncrasies with these. Like I can't, my microphone on my laptop doesn't work when I log in through, my account. So,
Oh, gosh.
So I'm on a different, different connection. But I'm here.
I'm trying to fix my sound. Can somebody say something? I just want to make sure this is it's working. Kelly, you're on mute though.
Hi, Mara.
Try saying something again.
Your
Oh,
sound sounds a little muffled. I don't know if it's my end.
No, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. And now I can hear you. I'm finally have my AirPods connected to my computer, so I don't have to be on my phone as well. However, the volume isn't always good. And so it's sometimes the volume is like max volume. I'm like, too much. But I think that's okay. And the volume on the microphone is okay.
It is for me. Yeah. If it's for me, it's for everybody else.
Perfect. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Good evening, Kathy.
Hi, Mara. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Glad you can hear me. I've been having trouble with Zoom all day long today.
Oh, shoot. No, you sound great.
Okay, good.
Now you got
Come
me
on,
nervous.
Zoom. Don't fail us now.
I know.
Good evening, Steve. Glad you're with us.
Thank you, Mara. Good to be here. Thank you.
Mhm. And Steve and Jerry, we've got you on the workshop portion of our agenda this evening, which is the discussion only portion. And so just give you a heads up as to timing, we're going to move through open forum, consent agenda, and then we've got 3 regular agenda items ahead of you tonight, a Headwaters 12th edition, Police Department body worn cameras policy draft review, and then a CARES Act technology expense. And then we will be, you are the first item on our discussion agenda. So probably 7:45-ish, 8 p.m.-ish if I were to estimate, but that's a complete estimate on my part.
So should we check back at 7:30?
You are welcome to be here if you want to log off and come back before 7 or come back at 7:30. You are certainly welcome to do so. And so whichever you're most comfortable with.
Okay. Gary, what do you want to do?
Well, I think I'll stay on. I'd like to hear about some of the stuff, and we also have
You
we also have 2 other board members joining, so we'll just let them decide if they want to sign off, come back at 7:30, or just stay on.
Perfect.
All right,
And
thank
you're
you.
welcome. You're welcome to be on. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, I see we are streaming live on YouTube. We have a quorum of council and we are right at 7 o'clock. So I will call our meeting to order this evening. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember
I'm
Gerard,
sorry, call the roll call.
Councilmember Gerard,
Here.
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson,
Here.
Councilmember Byström,
Here.
and Mayor Bain.
Here. I would invite everybody to join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are going to stand and say the pledge, if you'd like to shut your camera off, you can do so in the bottom left-hand tray of Zoom. And Dan is going to display the flag here. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Members of council, we have before you, actually, yes, you have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Tonight's agenda is approved. Our next item on the agenda this evening is open forum. Did we have any submissions for open forum this evening?
We do not have any submissions for open forum.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have items 6A through 6K. I will entertain a motion or any changes.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove item 6B from the consent agenda, but would move to approve item 6A and then 6C through 6K.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove item 6F. So
6F.
I would amend the agenda to approve A, C through E, and G through K.
There is an amended motion. Is there a second on the amended motion?
I'll second it, Myra.
And we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor to approve the amended consent agenda. And let's go back to a roll call vote. Karen, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda items approved, and moving on to item 6B. Councilmember Munson.
Motion to approve 6B.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call on 6B?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Abstain.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. 6B is approved, and moving on to 6F, the Leela Annex Building Site Improvements Award. Final project acceptance. Councilmember Byström.
Mayor Bain, since this is my employer, I just don't want a perception of a conflict of interest, so I'd like to abstain from this one.
Excellent. Is there a motion to approve?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve 6F on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Abstain.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. All right, moving on to our regular agenda items this evening. Our first item is the Headwaters 12th edition. We have a reassignment of development contracts. Donovan walking us through this.
Hello, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present the development contract reassignment for Headwaters 12. If you recall, Headwaters 12 is that filling the donut hole for Headwaters. And several months ago, council did approve an extension of their plat. At that time, I'd mentioned that a new buyer may be on the scene and we would come in for this reassignment of the contract. And so we are. And this is a document that the city attorney reviewed and approved, and it's essentially taking all the obligations from the original developer OP3 and assigning them to J. Johnson Development LLC, which is headed by Jaron Johnson of Guidance Homes, who's built many homes in the city. And they respectfully ask for council approval to that, council consent for that change of the person who is responsible for all the obligations of the development agreement. There have been no changes since that original approval in December of 2019 for this final plat contract development contract, sorry. I'm happy to take any questions from the city council.
Thank you, Donovan. Council members, any questions on the reassignment request this evening? Not seeing any questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Bain, I'll make a motion to approve the OP3 Headwaters LLC and J. Johnson Development LLC request to reassign the Headwaters 12th Development Agreement.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Not seeing any. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to our second regular agenda item 7B, police department body worn camera policy draft, and Chief Peterson and Captain Weiss.
Yeah, Mayor and City
Evening.
Council members, good evening. Tonight I want to introduce the police department's intentions on implementing a body-worn camera program. Recording police interactions with the public is nothing new to our city. In June of 2010, the Forest Lake Police Department was awarded in-car cameras through a grant from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. The in-car cameras record police interactions during traffic stops and when responding to emergency calls for service from the patrol vehicle. Many police departments started implementing in-car cameras throughout the next few years, and body-worn cameras soon followed. The first few police departments who implemented body-worn cameras had difficulties with policies governing when the camera should or should not be operated, concerns with camera costs, data retention costs, and who should or could have access to the recordings. Over the past 3 years, we have had numerous discussions regarding body-worn cameras and costs, and those prior mentioned concerns have been remedied. The body-worn cameras have been approved in this year's operating budget. For approximately a year now, Captain Weiss has been working closely with Roseville IT with an implementation plan on rolling out body-worn cameras department-wide. We have installed the necessary equipment in all of our patrol vehicles to accommodate the body-worn cameras, which will also work in unison with our in-car cameras. For the past month, we have been testing 4 body-worn cameras to understand their operations. Attached in your packet is the Forest Lake Police Department's draft body-worn camera policy. This policy was developed utilizing the League of Minnesota Cities body-worn camera model policy. This policy has been reviewed by our city attorney. A couple of questions have arose while reviewing our policy. The first was the records retention schedule. We are currently working with our city attorney on a separate document to specifically reflect body-worn camera retention schedules. Once this is done, we will post this along with the body-worn camera policy on our website. The second question was a question of who would conduct the biennial independent audit of the body worn camera program. A few agencies have their audits conducted internally. Our intentions are to have an outside private cybersecurity firm conduct the audit on the entire operating system every 2 years. I have researched some of these firms that have been used by other metro agencies. They usually charge a fee depending on the size of the department's sworn personnel. The audit for our department size would range anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. And once again, that would be every other year. Minnesota law requires that communities moving forward with body worn camera programs receive comments. They should receive comments at 3 junctures in the process. Number 1 is the introduction of body worn cameras to the city council and allow any comment and input from city council members. This is what we're doing right now. Second is to allow for public comment and input from community members regarding the body worn camera program via mail, email, or at a regularly scheduled city council meeting. And last is to allow for public comment and input from community members regarding the body worn camera program via mail, email, or at a regularly scheduled city council meeting once again. The next steps would be to post our intentions of implementing a body worn cameras for our officers on our city website and allow for public comment. We will also be posting our Forsyth Police Department body worn camera draft policy on our website and allow for public comment as well. These will be posted on our website for a minimum of 2 weeks. With that, Captain Weiss and I are available for any questions you may have regarding body worn cameras and our proposed rollout in the next coming months. And here's one for you to see.
Thank you, Chief. Council members, any questions for Chief and Captain this evening? Councilmember Gerard.
On the cameras, you know, you're using the model of the Minnesota League of Cities for your policy. How does that line up with how Washington County does it and some of the other surrounding communities? Are we extremely similar? I just want to make sure that we're not out on the edge somewhere. So I'm curious on that. And if you could spend 30 seconds briefly explaining what a Terry stop is, because I looked that up today and I'm more confused than I was before I started looking it up.
I can tell you, I don't know the number of Minnesota cities that are utilizing the League of Minnesota Cities model policy, but I can say it is the majority. When we were doing our research on putting together and compiling a body worn camera policy, we definitely found that the majority of the cities were using the League of Minnesota Cities model policy. And because it was reviewed by the League of Minnesota Cities, we decided to adopt that model.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question related to that. I did not go back and look at the model policy from the league. Do we have any substantial differences or departures from the model policy, or are we substantially adopting in whole that model policy?
We are pretty much adopting 90% of the model policy. There's a couple of options that we had, but we decided to stick with what they recommended. They actually had some, like a couple of options available, but you can definitely tell they were leaning towards one versus the other. And in reviewing other model policies, we decided to stick with the one that we felt most comfortable with and one that fit our department. We thought it fit the department well.
Okay. Councilmember Gerard had a question about a Terry stop. You want to give a quick 30-second overview of a Terry stop? Or maybe it's not a 30-second.
It's not a 30-second, but it's it's definitely a reasonable suspicion. It's a lower standard than probable cause, and I'm going to be honest with you, it'd be difficult for me to explain in 30 seconds. I don't know if Captain Weiss is on, if he wants to try to jump on that one or not. Oh, he must not be on.
He is not volunteering.
Hey,
Okay,
Karen?
we'll
Hold on one-
parking lot that. Go ahead,
How
Dan.
about this? I'll get back to Councilmember Gerard and see if I can explain it and see if I can even come up with some unique ways to explain it via video or via email.
All right, you got me now?
Oh, there's Captain Weiss.
There you are.
I just saw you trying to
Oh my
send a
gosh.
text here, Captain Weiss.
Yeah, Terry stop, Chief, you hit it right on the head. It's an investigative stop. So anytime that you would be pulling somebody over for one thing or another, investigative stop is a Terry stop. And we could go into the weeds very, very far on there. But anytime that you're going to have contact with the public, we want our cameras on. If it could go, some way other than just a standard meeting, you're not going to have it on a coffee, but you turn your lights on, you approach somebody and you stop their free will, you need to activate that camera.
Thank you for the 30-second explanation.
Thanks for asking, Paul.
Usually I'm better at technology, but I think I got it dialed in now, so.
Other questions on Councilmember Byström?
I have a few. First of all, are there any privacy considerations with this? And in particular, I guess my question is there any time when consent is required? And I think particularly going into a private home, or if there's a really sensitive situation, is there a need to require consent? My second question is about community policing. I know we really focus on community policing, and those relationships with our community is very, very important to us. Does this have a positive or negative effect on that relationship with the community? Meaning, somebody sees a camera, is there a reluctance to cooperate in any way, shape, or form? Is that, a deterrent to that kind of cooperation? And then I was just wondering how kind of the officers as a whole were sort of involved in some of this work, and if they have any additional concerns or any concerns that they're, expressing. I can imagine this adds a little bit of a layer of perfectionism pressure to them. And just was curious if there's a way the footage will be used where they're concerned, maybe evaluating performance or as a professional development or teaching tool. So kind of three questions that came to mind as I was reading through this. So the privacy, the community, and the officers.
Well, I can start out and maybe Captain Weiss can also add a couple of comments. What's interesting to me is when we started talking about body worn cameras, even a couple of years ago, and up to even today, it's amazing how many community members thought we already had body worn cameras.
Okay.
They just assumed we had them, and we have had the in-car cameras. So we literally have 5 in-car cameras in our patrol vehicles. So whenever we're on a traffic stop, we're in an emergency situation where we're responding to a call, we already have that video technology. It's when we are out of our vehicles and we might be going into a residence or into a building or out of view of that camera is where the body worn cameras really come into play and will assist us. Another answer to one of your questions in regards to the officers, over the last few years, our officers have literally been asking for us to implement body worn cameras. Once again, I had mentioned there's a lot of different reasons why we haven't implemented them. Some of them were a few years ago were the costs of the body worn cameras. The data storage 3 or 4 years ago was going to be $40,000 a year. Just last week, I learned that it's going to cost us less than $10,000 a year, and that cost is actually going down every year. So we're actually looking at possibly closer to like $6,000 a year for that data storage. And then some other reasons that I think I have it in the memo why it was delayed, were things like the COVID that we had no idea. We were planning on implementing these in January or February. And of course, with COVID and the pandemic, we just couldn't get to it. And I know you had a couple other questions in regards to privacy or implementation. And Captain Weiss, did you want to answer a couple of those questions?
Yeah, the privacy piece, on our end, we're responsible for the privacy piece. So we have already sent one of our administrative assistants to school to learn the redaction piece. So when it comes to calls for service, the privacy piece will come in later. There's no, we don't have to ask for permission to activate these cameras. So on the data end, that's where it will come in on the request for the data. If somebody requested a camera, then we would go through the redaction process.
Do you use your judgment? I mean, I think I can think of a couple of really sensitive situations, you know, that would be, you know, in the case of an abuse situation, for example, or a sexual assault situation. Just trying to think about the receiving end of being on camera. And I'm just wondering if you have some discretion, or is it just an automatic?
There's not a lot of discretion when it comes to the cameras.
Okay.
Now, if it's an interview, okay, let's take it a step further. We've solved the situation. We're now looking at the investigative piece. We do not use our cameras for the interview. If that, we have other means to record. The county attorney, the city attorney doesn't want to look at hours and hours and hours of video when we have other means using audio recorders or back at the office with our cameras within the building. The cameras are not going to be used to collect an interview from somebody. It's for the initial response, the point up until things are calm. Now, if we go to the next step with interviews, now we're not going to stand there and interview somebody and take our body camera off, put it on the table. That's not how it's going to work.
Okay. Helpful.
Wes, can I jump in with a kind of a piggyback question to that? It's section C, which is on page like 78 of our packet, shows a series of situations where discretion is permitted. And so if I understand you, I just want to make sure I understand this. If I understand you properly, the footage is going to be collected in these situations. However, it will be labeled accordingly so that it is able to be tagged and privacy is
correct.
Protected. Is that okay?
That's correct.
But the video is taken, it's just labeled accordingly.
Yeah, and before released, it would be reviewed.
Okay. Other questions of council? Councilmember Byström, that answered your 3 questions?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Other questions? I had just a couple of minor questions. I'm unclear on the process that's required to implement. There's a second step that involves public comment and a third step that involves public comment. Is there a difference between steps 2 and 3, or do we just need to do it twice?
That might be a good question for our city attorney, but I believe we can do it all at the same time. I don't see any reason why it has to be completely separate. It doesn't really, it just states that these 3 steps need to be taken. So I believe, we can put it on the website and mention the body worn camera that we're going to be implemented in a certain month. Let's just say it happens to be in September. They'll have the memo, they'll have a copy of the draft policy, and then allow the community for any public input via mail, email, or through the website in some other way. And I talked with Assistant City Administrator Dan Undum, and he said that he'd assist us with getting that up on the website.
Okay, thank you. And then I was surprised to hear that the audit would be conducted by somebody with more of an IT background. So So can we just talk about what the purpose, review what the purpose of the audit is? I was following along, however, I had a different purpose in mind. And so is it more of a technology review than it is a compliance to policy review? Or are we finding a firm that is able to provide us feedback on both?
I thought I had that printed. It actually
I think of
provides
that as a
input on-
separate set.
Oh, go ahead. I think I talked over you. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The firms that we saw, that a lot of them were conducting the audits, and when I say quite a few, I only saw, I pulled up like between 8 and 10, and a lot of them utilized firms that had both IT background and also law enforcement background. So it might not just be one individual who's an IT specialist. It's actually a firm that has a few individuals, kind of like the firm that conducted our police study. Remember, there were a lot of different individuals and professionals involved. Some were, mathematical analysts and things like that. Others were retired chiefs or captains, and others that assisted in the background. So it really just stated cybersecurity type of a firm, but it doesn't specifically have to be one.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief or Captain this evening on this topic? Not seeing any. Chief, you're not looking for action. You don't need any official action tonight, right? This is
No, I don't believe
initial
there needs to
feedback
be.
and initial review. Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to notify you that we were going to be implementing the body-worn cameras, and that we were going to be following Minnesota State statute in regards to that implementation. And after further review, I don't believe I needed any action. If the city attorney disagrees, I definitely would appreciate any feedback on that, but I do not believe we need any action.
Your Honor, members of council, I do not disagree.
Excellent. And then just for terms of timing for next steps, if council were to have any other sources of input, is your plan to put this in a September meeting for additional public review for steps 2 and 3? Is that your suggested timing?
I wasn't sure if we needed to put it on a regularly scheduled city council meeting. It says that is an option, or we can just go with the mail and email and have it on the website.
Okay. I'll just weigh in on I'll just weigh in on my personal preference here, and I'm open to hearing any feedback from council. I would suggest that we put this on a future council regular agenda again, and do some advance notification that we are going to be considering it, making sure that we've got some good communication out there, collect any feedback, good opportunity to engage in any dialogue of concerns, and then take official action at that time.
I agree, Mayor Bain.
I also agree.
Very good. All right.
Just a quick comment, if you don't mind. I didn't have any questions. I think it was explained pretty well, but generally overall, I think this is a really good idea because it protects both sides when something's going on. We don't have to rely on hearsay or what he said or what I said or whatever. And I think it's a great idea, and we can do it safely, I think, and a lot of communities do it, and we should be there with them. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Very good. I concur with your comments and look forward to our next discussion on this topic. Thank you. Before we move on, Chief or Captain, anything else you need from us on this topic tonight?
I don't believe so.
Very good. Thank you. Move on to our next agenda item, item 7C, which is the CARES Act technology expenses. Dan, I believe you're walking us through this.
Yep, Mayor, members of the council, I'm here to talk about the CARES Act technology expenses. If you recall, back in March, we had to get our workforce prepped for remote work. When we did that, I did not anticipate that lasting through August and probably anticipating through the end of the year. We deployed that very much sort of going through and finding decommissioned computers and kind of did it on a shoestring. It was very much a stopgap just to get the workforce deployed. However, as we are having to maintain that workforce longer, we do need to make some investments in technology and software to make sure that we're able to do that effectively and able to make sure that the work is being able to be done at home effectively. So with that, what I'm proposing tonight is purchasing some additional hardware and software for the City of Forest Lake employees to use and to work in both their in-office environment and a home environment. What's designed here is actually a modular system. So the employees will be assigned a laptop. They'll have a docking station at both their desk in the office and at home. That laptop will then travel with them from home back to work. Their workstations will mirror each other, both at home and at work. The new system also allows their phone number to transfer both from their work when they're in the office and when they're at home. That's one piece right now that we don't currently have. So if a resident needs to get a hold of a staff member, they have one number that'll work at home. It'll also work in the office. Additionally, scanning, we've had some issues with scanning not being able to be taking place at home because they don't have desktop scanners at home. This new package allows them to have a desktop scanner at home as well. So we're not losing any time in terms of getting documents input into our system, into our new accounts payable system. It has been tested. I've been using this system to make sure all the software and hardware is compatible. I've been testing this probably for maybe 3 to 4 weeks now. It is working extremely well. So the cost breakdown for the workforce side of it is $55,205 on the hardware side. There's an additional $17,630 needed for software upgrades. Most of those software upgrades are due to our need to increase our VPN capacity. Right now, we're using sort of a remote desktop, and this will be migrating employees to a VPN setup. Long term, this process by having one laptop per user will also be cheaper for the city. We don't have to maintain 2 computers per employee at that point. We can go down just to have support on 1 computer. Also, I rolled in the council chamber audio upgrade into this package as well. If you recall, back in July, we had that discussion on the need to make upgrades to our council chambers to allow for the blended remote and in-person meetings to happen. Currently, our current system would cause too much feedback within the audio system within council chambers to do a remote and in-person meeting. This package here before you tonight allows for the chamber audio upgrades to take place. It also has the laptops being replaced in council chambers to ones that can handle Zoom meetings better. So if we ever need to do a socially distanced in-person Zoom meeting of council members, we have the ability to then take the laptops out of council chambers, say up to the community room and socially distance and do that blended in-person meeting again. It gives another option for our in-person and remote capabilities for meetings. So all said, the ask tonight for the CARES Act expense is $88,349. That includes the council chambers, hardware totals, and software upgrades that are required to keep our workforce working remotely and working effectively. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the CARES Act purchases presented tonight.
Madam Mayor, I just have a quick question. I had a different amount. Did it change in our packet or did I write it down differently?
The packet amount is correct. My apologies. I'm using an old memo that I printed off last week. So my numbers are wrong. I apologize for that. The number in the packet is the correct number. That was me using an old outdated memo.
I thought it could be me too, so don't worry.
Nope, that's on mine, and I apologize for that.
Just to confirm, the total cost $72,835 is the requested amount.
No, 89,389.
Yep, yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you.
That's on
Scroll
page
down a little further. 89,389, which is city council chambers, 16,554. Hardware, 55,205. Software, 17,630 for a total of 89,389. Is that right?
Correct.
Madam Mayor, I'd make a
Sam?
motion that we give Dan the authorization to spend the $89,389 of the City of Forest Lake CARES Act funds for our remote workforce deployment and city council chambers upgrades.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? I did have, Councilmember Gerard, go ahead.
Dan, this is just a little nitpicky thing. When the employee gets called, I assume at home, then it rings and the person calls their desk phone number. If they have to call them back with a cell phone, does it show the city number or their private? I just want to make sure we're not giving home everybody's cell phone numbers.
Great question, Councilmember Gerard. So actually the way this system will work is the phone calls will actually be routed through their computer system. So we have an voice over IP phone system here. With the license upgrade, we're now able to use our computers to make and receive phone calls. So when the employee calls the person back or the resident back, their work number will actually display on the caller ID. You just have to select your computer to be the device, not your desk phone. And I've been making and receiving phone calls on my computer for probably 3 to 4 weeks now and have had zero issues with it. So it is a work number. There's no cell phone involved at all in this current system.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, a plug especially for filling the gap here on phone calls. I know that's been a challenge when folks have been working from home and haven't been able to take and make those phone calls. So that's much needed. I did want to have just a quick, is this 100% reimbursable under a CARES Act, or is there a local share that we need are out of pocket?
This should be all CARES Act reimbursable since it does specify remote workforce as an eligible expense. So all of these are 100% CARES Act reimbursable.
No further questions on my part, and I applaud and welcome the opportunity also for the mixed meetings of in-person in council chambers. If we were to get to a point of doing some in-person and some remote, that'll be a nice upgrade as well. All right, we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Any further questions or discussion? Not seeing any. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And motion carries. That concludes our action agenda this evening. We do have a couple items on our discussion or our workshop portion of the meeting. And transitioning over to that and just setting expectations. This is our workshop portion of the meeting where we are not expected or will not take any official action. This is extra working time for council and our invited guests. And first this evening, we have members of the Forest Lake Association joining us, talking about 2021 prioritization. And we are rolling into budget season. And I know the Lake Association has been working on kind of future projects. And so good time to align. Maybe first to get started, Jerry, do you want to introduce the members of your board that you have here this evening?
Sure, be happy to do that. So we have 3 other board members in attendance tonight. Ken Wood is one of our co-vice presidents. Steve Schmalz is also one of our co-vice presidents. And Doug Jones is our treasurer. So there's 4 of our 12 board members here present tonight.
Excellent. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I wish we were in person, but we are going to make the most out of this remote time. So I would encourage us to make this as interactive as we can. I know that you have prepared a discussion deck. Do you want to start with that and then we can move into just some open discussion and Q&A?
Sure, I think so. I think, Dan, I don't know if you could start the deck, but first of all, thanks thanks, Mayor Bain and city council members and city staff for allowing us to have this discussion with you tonight. If you recall, we met later, I think it was September last year in city council chambers for a workshop. And that was also very informative. I think it was educational for both sides. So I think this is also going to be very helpful tonight that we can maybe, we're not going to drill down into too much detail, but we have some things on a broader picture that I think are important for the city to understand about the Lake Association and have some discussion. So maybe we can start with the agenda item. Next slide, please. So the agenda is, if you've looked at it, is pretty concise. We'll talk, one of the things we heard at the workshop last year, and we heard it from actually some council members and also some people in the public there, is that, you know, the Lake Association is not all that robust of an organization. So we want to explain to you what this association has done in the last year, and we'll talk about that for just a few minutes. We'll talk a little bit about the long-term priorities of the Lake Association. And then we'll talk about the 2021 priorities, which obviously are the near priorities and which obviously enter into funding considerations as we move forward into 2021. And then a kind of a general discussion about the total expenditures for the lake. And then I would sure entertain discussion about how do we increase our communication partnership with the city. So we'll try to keep this brief. And again, as Myra said, I hope we can have some question and answers here as we go through. So please interrupt me or our other board members if you got questions as we're going through this. Next slide. So what are the accomplishments of the Lake Association here in 2020? So we created a brand new website in February of this year, and we've had over 3,800 views on our website. I think that's pretty phenomenal considering we're a nonprofit organization. We also did a significant update in our Facebook page, and we've had 5,400 likes to date on our Facebook page. Again, pretty significant considering we're a nonprofit organization. More exciting though is that this year we've surpassed 400 individual homeowner membership. And actually, I just ran through the numbers today. We're actually at 441 members that are not, I'd probably say 99% of those members live on the lake, but there's a couple of people who don't live on the lake and still contribute and belong to the Lake Association. Interestingly, we have 26 businesses that are also members. We call them our lake sponsors. They believe so strongly in the lake and the Lake Association that they've actually become sponsors and pay a membership fee to be part of the association. And with that comes some advertising and some media implications for them. So again, we're bringing businesses from Forest Lake into the association. None of you could have not missed our signs that are around the lake. We gave out over 300 of these signs to our members, and they were free. We paid for that out of our dues, and anyone who wanted a sign to put in their yard, we welcomed it. And that was a successful program we never ever anticipated. And I still get calls about where can I get one of those signs? So that's still going on. One of the things that we never really talked about last year too much, but I think this is kind of an important thing, is the Lake Association from our own funds has spent over $10,000 on improvements to the city dock at Lakeside. And we've been donating that back to the city. And that has been extremely successful from a standpoint of members saying, God, it's really nice that there's actually a place I can dock my boat. And that should help significantly with downtown businesses because people come downtown now to go to the restaurants and do other things like that. So that added dock has been significantly enhancing everything about downtown and Lakeside Park. In 2020, we also expanded our weed harvester operation. I want to personally thank Dave Adams for all the hard work he's done with us and working with us on this harvester this year. He's just done a phenomenal job. We really, really appreciate that. But we are running that harvester full time here this summer in 2020. And there's an expense to the Lake Association of about $8,000 for paying for that harvester operator who is a city seasonal employee this year. And it's been working out great. I'm getting a lot of compliments from residents around the lake appreciating that we're trying to decrease the weed population. The other thing that's pretty exciting is Gene Hallberg reached out to us in mid-July and offered to do a $10,000 match to any donations that we were able to achieve by September 1st. So we've started we call it the $10,000 Hallberg Challenge. And we are almost at that $10,000 in donations from both individuals and businesses and some civic organizations actually too. And so that is a pretty exciting thing to do. It's driven a lot of enthusiasm from both members, individual members, and from businesses. And then the last thing that's been exciting is we've recruited and trained 9 individuals to be what we call lake ambassadors. This is a program that Ken Wood, who's on the call here with us, implemented. And these lake ambassadors are what they are. They're going around the neighborhoods. They're talking to their neighbors. They're reaching out to people, encouraging them to think about the lake, do what's right for the lake, join the Lake Association, so forth and so on. We fully expect that number will grow dramatically. I would be hoping for, I don't know, 50 of those people here next year, but we'll see. So anyways, so that's our accomplishments for 2020. Ken, Steve, or Doug, any other comments on that?
No, I think you hit it.
Okay. So we've been
Terry, that was a great summary. I would just one shout out for 2 of our board members, Chris and Andrea. They have done a lot of the legwork on our website and on the Facebook page, and they're younger members of the board, and they did just a fantastic job. Really awesome.
So we kind of took it to heart what we heard last year at our workshop in September, and I think you can see we've gone the extra mile here. So
you're over 400, and you said like closer to 440 members now. Where were you a year ago? What type of growth does that show? Just roughly.
We're in the mid 300s, so we've increased 100 members in a year.
That's
you
great.
know, that 440 is about 45% of the homeowners on the lake. We think that's pretty phenomenal, actually. And our goal is to hit that 500 mark next year. And we're looking for a 10% growth a year. Now, there'll be some point where we'll hit a saturation point, won't go any larger, but we're not there yet.
Jerry, what do you attribute that increase to? Do you attribute to the ambassador program, the signs, all of the above? What do you attribute that growth to? Because that's pretty significant. I know you were concerned about that number earlier, your number in the 300s, and you were just sort of stuck there, but it seems like you've kind of reached a tipping point.
Communication and education. You know, we started, our new website, our updated Facebook. The signs were amazing how many more people joined the Lake Association when they started seeing these signs. There are people living in Forest Lake and are on the lake that don't even know there's a Lake Association. And so I've had people say, "Oh, I didn't know there was a Lake Association. I saw your sign." Like, okay, got it, So, it's educating and communicating. That's a big part of it. By all means.
I would say one other thing too is one other thing is on the Facebook site. So we did a geofencing type of advertising where you put a dot in the middle of the lake and draw a 5-mile diameter circle and then advertise just to those folks. So we were targeted and wisely spent some of the resources to recruit new members.
Yep.
I have to say the signs were brilliant. Those were absolutely brilliant. We live on the lake and no way are we gonna not have a sign. So it worked. I mean, it did. You know, and I think like you said, Jerry, a lot of people just didn't know it existed. It wasn't that they didn't want to, they just didn't know it existed. We were members, but we were getting our sign.
Well, what's interesting is when the board approved to do this, I ordered 60 signs and I was worried that we weren't going to get rid of the 60 signs. And then I couldn't keep them. Every 2 days I was reordering another 60 or whatever because it just was like hotcakes. So.
Well, and I think the coolest thing is seeing the signs, not just in people's yards who live on the lake. I've seen them in other neighborhoods because, you know, you don't have to live on the lake to use the lake. So I think that's fantastic too.
Yeah, we have businesses downtown and, you know, in Forest Lake that are advertising their sign out in front there too. So again, they're supporting the lake. Okay.
Yeah, we also see some people put the signs on the lake side of their property and some on the street side. So we're getting advertising at two different paths.
Okay, let's let me go back to the first agenda. Go back to Dan. Can we go back to the agenda slide, please? So you asked the question, what are our long-term priorities for Lake Association? Well, one of their number ones is improved water quality. And I can tell you that the board of the Lake Association very much appreciates what the city is doing relative to MS4. Again, the street sweeping, which we all know, and the numbers are starting to come in, how effective that is in removing of phosphorus. That's a great program. You know, the pond clean out that's happening, started here this year, you know, is a great program. So I think we would echo, I think a little bit what the watershed district is echoing, is that we're really happy with what the city is doing with MS4. We have a long ways to go yet, but we're making good progress. And so we're very happy with that. That is one of our long-term priorities, is to continue to improve our water quality, obviously. The other thing that's important to us is the protection and improving recreational value. You know, Forest Lake is the heaviest used lake in Washington and Ramsey County. You have to go over to Lake Minnetonka, or even down to Prior Lake potentially. We're busier than White Bear Lake. So, you know, we have issues, and we'll talk a little bit about that further on, but we have issues on Forest Lake. And so we want to make sure we protect our recreational value, but also improve it also for all residents of Forest Lake and a lot of people that come up here to use the lake.
Jerry, just to comment on the water quality issue, it's not just water quality, but as the council, you're interested in business development, for every basically 3 feet of improvement in water clarity, that increases property value supposedly around 6%. And our goal is to go from an average water clarity of 3 feet in the summer, 3 to 4 feet in the summer, somewhere to 12 feet eventually. And we're making good progress on that. So that could be as much as a 12% increase in property values. And that means, of course, you know, with 13% of the Forest Lake living on the lake, they account for about 40% of the taxes. That's a nice bump for the city and for everyone else too, in terms of extra revenue. So something we should be aware of.
That's all of the benefits of just clearer water. So yeah,
Right.
agree.
Besides just enjoying the lake and making it much more
Right.
supportable. So.
Right.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so those are kind of our long term. Now let's maybe get down to our shorter term. So what are our 2021 priorities? We need to expand our Eurasian milfoil control. Eurasian milfoil came into First Lake 5 years ago. We have been battling it for the last 5 years. Every year we are treating more and more acreage of Eurasian milfoil. Fortunately, to date, we have managed to keep it contained within First Lake. That's pretty unusual, actually. If it continues to, we don't want it to spread into second and third. If we do that, then we're going to have a significant impact on the whole lake. So we need to do a more robust Eurasian milfoil control in First Lake starting in 2021 and beyond to try to, there's no eradication of it, but we need to control it to make sure it never does get out of First Lake, basically, okay? Second thing we want to do priority wise is we want to increase the harvester time that we operate it. Not an additional harvester, that's not feasible, but we want to run the harvester perhaps longer hours and maybe even on a Saturday or something like that to be able to actually do more. In 2020, we are cutting 100 acres of vegetation on the lake. That's a lot, but there are still areas that we're not cutting because we don't have time. And so we want to increase that for next year. And Dave and I have had discussions about that already, Dave Adams, and we'll continue to work towards that end here in 2021. The next thing is really exciting to us. This was actually one of the we did a Google survey of our membership and asked them, what are the 3 things you want to see happen with this $10,000 Hallberg Challenge? One of the first things that was on there was they wanted to they wanted to have expanded Eurasian milfoil control, the harvester, and thirdly was a fishing pier. And the board of the Lake Association has talked about this at length. We think we are missing something on this lake and not having a community fishing pier of some sort. Many of the lakes around us have a community fishing pier. White Bear Lake has one, Big Marine has one at the park preserve there. We don't have one. So what we would like to explore is expanding the dock, the public dock, and incorporating a fishing pier of some sort into that. That would be a significant draw for Lakeside Park. It'd be a great benefit for the community. I've been in contact with the president of your boat club. He and I have spoken twice because I know your boat club is interested in expanding their marina there. My conversation with Luke, the president, is we need to coordinate our efforts. We don't want your boat club doing something that interferes with or is not aligned with what we want to do with a public dock and fishing pier potentially there. So this actually, I hope, can be a 3-way discussion, the city, your boat club, and Lake Association about this particular item. So we may not get the fishing pier installed in 2021 because of DNR. We may need city support in getting through the DNR on that. But we're committed to working towards that goal, basically.
Can I interrupt just a second? I'm still seeing the agenda slide in front of me. Are we referencing? I don't know if it's my computer or if it's, yeah. I'm assuming you're referencing another slide, Jerry.
I'm not. There's no other slide, Kathy.
Besides the agenda slide?
Well, there will be when we come to dollars.
Oh, okay, got it.
There's 2 more slides regarding dollars.
I thought you had moved past this. So, no, okay, sorry about that.
I wanted to give you the priorities and then we can just go and look at the dollars.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. The other priority we have, and this is something that I brought up to City Council and Mayor Bain here last fall also, and that is the city has 2 uncontrolled boat launches. One is a paved launch that is right on the channel between First and Second Lake, and the other one is an unimproved launch that comes into First Lake, and these are in neighborhoods. Unfortunately, I've seen people launching boats at both of these launches. Not a lot, but you know, I don't think any of us would like to have some new aquatic invasive species come into Forest Lake because someone launched a boat at an uncontrolled access. So I know these accesses are used by people for putting their canoes in, their kayaks, stuff like that. And I think that's wonderful. They also are used in the wintertime for ice fishermen to gain access to the lake. We think that's terrific. But we really think putting a chain across the entrance to that to not allow someone to back a boat down these launches is is important for the lake, and they can still go around the chain and put their kayaks and go down, go swimming, whatever else they want to do. We're just trying to stop the boats from going into the water. And we can take the chain down in the wintertime. People can drive out there then in the wintertime to go ice fishing. So I hope that that's something that, you know, the city and staff will consider looking into more detail.
Can I ask a couple of questions specifically to that goal? And before I ask those questions, I'm going to just back up a second to just talk about and remind council as it relates to expanded dock and fishing pier. That also came up at the downtown group that the EDA launched last month. And so that may be an avenue for, from the city's perspective, on some partnership related to the downtown initiative and the EDA. Just wanted to, that might be the avenue for the city's support of that. Just wanted to throw that out there. As it relates specifically to these boat launches, I could use some background information. And if this is more of a staff question, staff, please chime in as well. Were these areas ever intended to be actual boat launches, or were they intended for non-motorized boats and they just over time have become used by, I mean, are people backing vehicles and trailers into these launches? And was that the intent, or has that just become a kind of practice over time? And Jerry, maybe you know too.
Well, Myra, I can say the one that's paved, I mean, it's asphalt paved all the way down to the water. So that was always intended to be a boat launch. You don't pave, you don't pave something down to the water if it wasn't intended to be a boat launch.
Is there parking adjacent? Is there sufficient parking adjacent to these locations? What I'm trying to get at is how much of a used community amenity are we getting rid of if we were to close those? I
understand what you're saying. I mean, I can't tell you whether people parked a car there or it's the neighborhood that's using these launches.
Okay.
I don't know that. The one unimproved launch that comes into First Lake there, there's no parking there, but the asphalt paved one, someone could park there. Because it's wide, it's pretty developed. So I don't know. But, from that standpoint, I mean, there are other, it isn't that far to take your boat over to First Lake and put it in there either, I don't know if people are using these launches every day or, it's convenient. There's no question about it, but it also allows potentially an impact to the lake that long term.
Yeah, I understand. And there's a history of some of these access points of, challenges for, that neighbors have had. And so there's, this has been kind of an ongoing topic of consideration of what do we do with these areas. And I guess unless somebody's able to kind of articulate why they need to stay open, I do think, the Lake Association makes a valid point on why we should consider closing them to certainly motorized boat traffic. I think we want to allow them to be open for paddle boards and canoes and kayaks and non-motorized craft. But motorized craft, I guess I would be open to making probably the recommendation to Parks, Lakes and Trails that they were to close that. I don't know, council, other feedback items on that?
What two locations are we talking about?
The one launch is on Woodland Drive Southeast. And that is the unimproved one. And then Beach Drive Southeast is the paved one.
Okay. I'll just speak. I have frequent communications with the resident that is adjacent to the Woodland property, and I'm fairly confident that they would fully support closing that for launch. And there isn't there isn't good parking options, which just kind of creates even a bigger neighborhood challenge. Jerry, the other property though, that is the paved launch, which one is that?
That's on Beach Drive Southeast.
Okay,
That
also
is-
back in the bay.
Well, no, it's not on the
Or
bay. It's
bay.
actually, it's right there when you come from First Lake into Second Lake.
Yeah, it's in the, yeah,
I mean, it's
in the
it's
bay neighborhood, but it's on the
in
lakeside,
the
yeah.
neighborhood, but it's right almost on the channel between First and Second there, and it's a great paved road down to the lake.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I just asked that for your consideration. To us, that's one of our priorities. Okay.
Very good.
Last thing, this is something that I may ask for the city's help on this, and maybe the chief's help on this is, it's something we have talked about this year a lot in our board meetings. We have a significant safety problem right now on the lake. And that is in the channel going from First Lake to Second Lake. The channel is fairly narrow. There is no speed limit. And so any of you who have been on the lake and have been kind of going through that channel, you're going on a pontoon at 5 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you have a boat coming past you at 50 miles an hour. We've had some complaints about it. Personally, this is maybe my bandwagon this year, but we're waiting for an accident to happen there and maybe something serious or even a death. Washington County Water Patrol patrols the lake, but they cannot do anything with that channel from a speed standpoint.
Really?
Because it is not classified as a no wake zone. It's not classified as a slow wake zone. So therefore there is no speed limit there. We can.
DNR, is that a DNR designation? Who
So-
can make that classification?
So in order to get it classified, and there's a lot of politics involved in this discussion.
Yes.
To get it classified as a no wake zone or even a slow wake zone, a slow wake means less than 15 miles an hour. The city has to actually file a petition with the DNR. The Lake Association cannot do this. The city has to petition the DNR to reduce the speed in that zone area, okay? And once the city does that, then the DNR goes back to the sheriff, goes back to the city, goes back to the public. It's a long drawn out process. This is a year-long process before they'll say, okay, we agree that you can do this in that channel. I'm just trying to make it safe for not only our residents, but other visitors that come to the lake. And this year with COVID, we've had so many boats on this lake. It's been a dangerous location, and I'm surprised someone has not gotten hurt or injured seriously in that channel so far. So,
yeah, based on lake boat inspections, we've had already as many boat inspections as we had all last year. So we're running at about a 30% higher rate. And if you talk to Hallberg, they've had their best sales year ever for boats in the history of the company. So everybody is going to the lake when they couldn't do anything else. So we have a lot of extra traffic there.
Yeah, and my concern, especially around the channel and safety, is we have significant spots that are very, very shallow. And if you are, not familiar with the lake and that not being marked as a no wake zone, you could be in for a very rude awakening depending on the depth of your boat.
this would be something I think we can discuss later on. Like I said, we'll need some city support if we try to do something there, but it is, to me, it is a public safety thing. So something we should consider. So that's our 2021 priorities. So
I know you want to move on, but just have you had conversation with Washington County Water Patrol on other safety considerations? Are they aware of your concerns? I know that they can't put in the speed limit or the no wake zone, but broader safety concerns. Have you had that conversation?
I have
Okay.
with the Washington County Sheriff there, Water Patrol. He understands, but like he said, I can only do so much. I can't write a ticket for someone going through that area at 40 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour. I can't.
Understood.
You can write a ticket if they come too close to another boat, but you can't write a ticket for speed.
Understood.
So. Okay, Dan, could we go to, okay, next slide. There we go. So we wanted to give you a little idea here, kind of what's happening here from a monetary standpoint. And this is what we put together for estimated 2020 lake expenditures. These numbers you see here are fairly accurate, at least from a city spend standpoint. These were the 2019 spend from the city. We just use basically the same numbers for 2020. And then you see the total spend on the right there for the total cost of those activities. So, and I think maybe Patrick could confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the 59,000 is pretty accurate because that includes what the city paid for Eurasian millfill treatment, and then there was an invoice from the watershed district for the remaining dollars. So that equals about the $59,000, which is pretty close to what I thought your budget was for 2019, and I think it's pretty close for that for 2020. So this shows basically that you know, the city is a great supporter and partnering and helping us to maintain these important things on the lake. So we thought that'd be a good reference point for you. Nobody's got any questions on this? Okay.
I'll unmute myself, sorry. I just want to make sure I understand. So $59,000 is what the city is paying. The remaining balance is paid by the Lake Association?
Paid by Lake Association and the Watershed District.
And the
all
watershed.
other grants.
And grant monies.
Grant monies.
Grant monies,
Okay.
Lake Association and the Watershed District, yes.
And
So
actually, this
the-
year's estimate, 136,000 is about as low it's been in the last 5 years. We have some years where we spent $150,000 treating curly leaf pondweed. So it's
And is that because that's cyclical based on year of treatment?
based upon the assessment of when they delineate the lake, they look at how much has been growing and where it has to be treated. Last year, I think we spent 72,000. This year it's 38, which is one of the lowest years we've ever had for curly leaves. So,
Okay.
which
But
is
and
good.
the city's contribution to that, has that been fairly level?
Right. We try to use the money where we can best make the most advantage of it, depending on what the
Okay.
need is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things, and I'll mention on this slide here, one of the things that the Lake Association has been in discussion with the Watershed District about, Mike Kinney in particular, is that up to, for the last number of years, what's happened is that the city has been paying some monies through the Lake Association for Eurasian millfill treatment, and the remaining monies of this 59,000, the $100, the 25,000, the 15,000, has been paid directly to the Watershed District. They've invoiced the city, and the city has paid the Watershed District. In discussion with the Watershed District, and Steve, you can correct me, but I know you and I have talked about this, that there is a belief that perhaps it would be beneficial not to have such a convoluted process of who is not necessarily controlling the dollars, but who's managing the dollars. And so if this is something that the city would consider, the Watershed District would be fine with the Lake Association being responsible for kind of managing these dollars, and that you wouldn't necessarily be getting invoices from 2 or 3 different entities. It'd be basically through the Lake Association. So something we can talk about further, but for now it is something that is acceptable to the Watershed District too.
I'll just chime in to say open to considering. We just want to make sure if we're doing that, we've got the right agreements in place, so we're sure of what's being done. But yeah, open to a more efficient funding stream for sure, if that's
Right.
yeah.
Okay. All right, the last slide. And here is kind of our potential 2021 expenditures. So we talked about an enhanced, more robust Eurasian milfoil treatment. We think that's anywhere from 50 to 75,000. The enhanced dock and fishing pier, you see that's, we don't know what these numbers are today, okay, but 25 to 50,000. The additional harvester time is maybe 14, and then you can see some other smaller dollar items. So the total is about $112,000 that we would expect to spend in 2021. It could go more than that, but you know, like everything else, you have to try to work within your means too. So the 100,000 is probably in the ballpark for 2021. Now, our annual revenue from a lake association is between 30 and 35,000. However, our Hallberg Challenge, we think will bring in another $20,000 to $25,000. So, you know, we have, as lake association, we have, you know, some monies to do something with, but not $100,000 worth. So this kind of sets the tone perhaps for your thought process when you're talking budget for the lake. You know, and as far as prioritizations of the monies from the city, we would suggest that the Eurasian milfoil treatment is a high priority with the city. The dock and fishing pier is a high priority, and the wheat harvester would be the high priorities. So those would be the three things that, you know, we would like to see the city participate with us on. The rest of the stuff, you know, would be stuff that we can afford ourselves, basically.
Gary, when you add up all these numbers, it does come up to 112,000, but then you jump over to 237,000, and there's only 50,000 more showing. Not sure where that other 75,000, give or take, is.
Paul, you are very good with numbers. That was my error. It's $162,500, not 237,000. Yes. Thank you for catching.
Works.
We were hoping someone would catch that. So, I mean, that's a big number. I mean, I don't know how we could ever justify, I mean, $162,000, that's a lot, so.
So Jerry, one of the things you and I were talking about is that the Eurasian milfoil, I thought there might be a possibility that it's a 1-year expense and then it lasts for a couple of years. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, there's some treatments that are available now with certain chemicals that actually for Eurasian milfoil, we can treat it. It's quite expensive. It's kind of the $50,000 to $75,000 range. We can treat it 1 year, and we actually have a guarantee of no Eurasian milfoil growth for 3 years. And that warranty is from the manufacturer. And if it grows back up where we treat it, then they will retreat it at no cost.
Is this the same as the treatment that was done on Clear Lake?
That's my question too.
Yeah, no, I can't answer that. I know Clear Lake had a whole lake treatment for Eurasian milfoil. Right. I don't know if there was a guarantee for 3 years. I don't know, Kathy. I don't know.
According, I know some guys over there, and according to them, yeah, it's a 3-year guarantee.
Okay. I looked at that for First Lake, whether we could do a 3-year entire whole lake eradication for 3 years. All the applicators told me it was impossible to do that because there's water flowing between the First Lake and Second Lake, and you would never get the control you need.
Does it help with the budgeting if it's spread over, you know, if it's a peak for 1 year and then it's lower for the next couple of years for that treatment?
Yeah, that was the rationale with the Clear Lake proposal as well. Is that it wasn't, you know, continually coming back.
Right.
You know, it was you were able to look at a more long-term solution. So spreading out, you know, basically spreading those dollars over a period of time.
I mean, I think, I know you're in your budget process, and I know that's not an easy thing, particularly with COVID going on and revenue coming in and so forth like that. So we just wanted to be able to show you tonight kind of where we're thinking our expenditures are. These are pretty realistic, you know, and, you know, we want to continue to do great things for the lake, and but we can't do it all by ourselves either.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Being that we're in the middle of budget or trying to get this budget, I guess I just want to know what the ask is. I mean, you've got ranges here and they go from 50 to 75 and 112 to 160. So what's this year's ask? How much? I mean, can you narrow that down for us and what it would be for?
Sure. I know that was this, I know that's a question that came up. I know that, you know, you have a budget right now in that $59,000 or $60,000 range. I also know that it'd be difficult, you know, we'd love to say, well, give us another, you know, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for 2021. I don't know if that's realistic or not. But, you know, the ask, my opinion is if we can, if for 2021, if the city can find in their budget to add another 20, 25,000 to that number, then we can do these things here, I think, along with the funds from the Lake Association and some grant monies that we got. So the first top three items there are the ones that we would want to stay focused on and, you know, use the bulk of the dollars from the city for.
Okay.
So you're saying, Jerry, 75 to 80,000 then, in that range to start?
60 and 25 would be 85.
85,
so 80 to 85,000. That's a significant increase. And I know that's going to be you know, I know that's a tough thing from a budget standpoint on a line item basis, but you know, we'll take whatever we can get.
Have you explored any potential funding sources for that fishing pier concept?
Well, I mean, the civic organizations have contributed monies, you know, to this challenge based upon the fact that fishing pier is a community event. The civic organizations have told us that, you know, they're not going to help contribute monies to, you know, treating Eurasian milfoil. Okay, they want to have something for the kids, something for elderly people and the general public. So that's kind of the local civic organizations want to have some sort of community involvement, which we all support to that too. So
I'm just wondering about some of the more major organizations that support fishing as recreation.
Sure.
And, you know, sometimes they do some of those fishing for senior events or teach a kid how to fish event or, and I just didn't know if there were potentially any grant funds available through them to, you know, kind of maybe supplant some, you know, existing funds that or do a match or something. I don't know if you've explored that at all.
I have not explored it yet because this is such a big concept, a wide open concept. I mean, we don't know if it's even feasible to do it yet.
Okay.
You know, there's lots of regulations with the DNR, but it's something that we think we want to pursue pretty heavily, and hopefully we can win out. But it would take the support of the city, the Lake Association, and you know, the community, I think, to put some pressure on DNR to allow it to happen too.
Mayor, City Council, there
Wait,
are specific
please, Ryan.
grants out there that cover exactly what you guys just talked about through the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. Talks about, you know, even boat accesses to fishing piers, maximum award 250,000, minimum project 20,000, match up to 50% of the project project. This year's applications were due March 27th, 2020. So typically each March is when the applications are due. It's an annual grant.
It's going to take a team effort, I think, because even on the Hallberg Challenge, we had some local funds and some local organizations that donated money just because they wanted to help the community. So I think if you got the community involved, there'd be additional money coming in from there also, from various trusts that are available, et cetera.
So can you clarify, as I'm thinking about putting my budget hat on, right, as we're kind of getting heavily into that season. So I'm hearing you say a couple of things, Jerry. I'm hearing you say this is a priority for 2021, but it's going to take us a long time to get there. So that this fishing pier concept idea. So are you expecting you can get there quickly enough to be able to build, to expend dollars in 2021? Or would you be looking more toward 2022, using 2021 to kind of navigate through DNR or whatever, whatever needs to happen there?
I mean, I don't have all the answers for you. I do believe we also talk about expanding enhanced dock. I mean, I think whatever we do at that public dock, it may be in 2021 that we do a phase 1 of enhancement for that dock area. The fishing pier may or may not go in 2021, depending upon the permitting from the DNR. But you have to have a master plan of how this is all going to work too. And then that coordinates with what is your boat club going to do in that area also. Very little room between your boat club and the public dock right now. And so it's going to take some coordination among all parties. So it could very well be that the fishing pier actual expenditure doesn't happen to 2022. Yes.
Okay.
The immediate need though, next year is for us to take a more aggressive stand on Eurasian water milfoil to see what we can do, if we can actually contain that even more than we've been doing. So the next 1 or 2 years would be kind of experimental on that. So we need a little extra money for sure to be able to be more aggressive next year in what we do for Eurasian water milfoil.
Right.
Would that be a good summary, Jerry? I think.
Yes.
It just helps me.
And along that lines is, sorry, go ahead.
It just helps me kind of put my prioritization hat on, as I'm looking at projects and kind of the cadence of those projects, better understanding when they're going to occur, and aligning resources with that cadence. So.
Yes. And remember the other.
Along that lines, is it possible to, if we decided that Eurasian milfoil was a strategic project for the lake and for the community, that to pay ahead and have that in the budget where it shows, hey, we've made this investment, but then the expense is lower in the out years? Does that work with the budget process?
I think usually we take that year to year. I mean, if it's a first year expenditure, then we would see how it goes. And if it goes down, then we would talk about if we continue that support or we can reduce it or alter it to a different purpose.
Yeah, I think we're talking about related to the expanded, the dock and the pier. It sounds like we're kind of aligning towards, it's on our mutual 2021 work plans to be working towards that, although recognition that we may not actually have a funded project until 2022.
Right. And again, I remember that one slide that showed the $59,000 expenditure. We're not saying that all of those dollars expended, that $59,000 isn't expended on similar items for 2021. But what we're saying is that, the Eurasian milfoil, as an example, it could be that we need another $25,000 beyond the $18,000 that the city contributed this year to Eurasian milfoil to try to do a more enhanced, robust treatment in 2021. So, and I don't know if the city wants to designate individual today or even in the budget process, individual line items as to what the expenditure is going to be, or whether that is a discussion to say, we agree that we will arrive at a budget and then we will sit down and work through where are we going to spend those dollars in 2021. I don't know how that would work. So that's, we've talked for almost an hour here. I don't want to, keep everybody too long here. So any other questions? Okay.
I have just a wild idea, and I haven't looked at if this is even possible, but I'll throw it out there. I don't know if there's, we have this CARES Act funding that needs to be spent by mid-November. And I hear from the Lake Association that part of the impact to the lake is currently a COVID impact around utilization. Is there any sort of provision in CARES Act funding for, replenishment of natural resources that might have extra wear and tear because of COVID? It might be a stretch, but I thought I would throw it out there.
I think we'd have to look at that and see if it would be covered. If we're going down that road, I would ask the Lake Association to tell us what that impact is and kind of a summary so we can get a better idea exactly what the impact is before we would, include that in the COVID budget, which we have to present to the council before we're through this whole thing. So if the Lake Association wants to try to quantify that in writing so we can see if it works, we'll look at it, but there's no promises on that one. That one's might be a little tough.
Well, there's been some
It
impact.
might be a stretch.
Yeah, there's some impacts. We can give you some information. We'd be happy to do that.
At least the counts that are up, I don't know. We're kind of in the land of throw it at the wall and see what sticks, and
well, I think the boat inspection,
see where we land.
The boat inspection, the significant higher number of boats entering the lake, should justify, and we have documents of that, should justify increased cost for boat inspection.
Yeah, I have no doubt that there is a COVID impact. I just don't know if the CARES Act allows any funding to go towards that. So, but something we should look at.
Okay. Well, I want to first thank you for your attention and your diligence here with us in these slides. Hopefully you've become a little more educated about what we're doing as Lake Association and our desire to keep Forest Lake, one of the premier lakes in the area here. So, and it's a big draw. We know what it does for businesses and downtown. So it's important.
Council, before we drop off here, any other questions for Jerry and the other board members of the Lake Association?
No, I think just to thank you, just to thank you for the kind of comprehensive overview. It's very helpful. I'm glad we were able to get a little more of a jump on it this year. It seemed like it came a little late last year for us. So it's better to be ahead of it, I think, than behind it like we have been in the past. So appreciate it. We know that is an incredible asset in this community, and I think we want to do whatever we can to protect it. So
thank you very much for your time, and any other questions, email us, any of the board members, myself, whatever, and we'll definitely be able to respond to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for thank you for taking the time tonight, and thank you for all that you do. We are going into what I'm expecting to be a tough budget season. There's a lot of unpredictable factors this year, but it's good to know what the ask is, and certainly we will come back with other questions and what we suggest for next steps. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, transitioning to our next agenda item, and of course I moved off of my agenda here. We have a discussion item related to pop-up sales and food trucks. I think Patrick is going to walk us through this.
Yeah, we've this last 2 weeks we have some complaints about pop-up locations and food trucks we've had in the past, and all that's basically governed by Chapter 113 of our ordinances that regulate that kind of use. And particularly in this case, the pop-ups are a transient merchant, which is a use that, or an exercise that needs a license to sell. It has to submit a license, the fee, and it gets a background check. Same thing as a peddler. If you're peddling wares from door to door, you have to have a license, you have to get background checked. Transient merchants in this case have to have the owner's permission. They have to, not be in the right of way, pretty much. However, what you might, that's also different than a solicitor. Solicitors that are going around door to door, they don't have to have a license. They just have to register that they're going to door. So also food trucks, we've had some complaints about food trucks. We do not regulate food trucks whatsoever. That's more of a health department from the county's thing to do. I would tell you that I don't think that we want to get into the health inspection business if we can avoid that. However, if you want to discuss where they can be located or where they can't be located, hours of operation, safety, we can do that. Same thing with the transient merchants or peddlers. If there's something that you believe needs to be changed, or you want to have a discussion about their use, we can certainly do that. One thing I will caution you, though, is that if it's related to, you have to be very careful as we get into the political season. If some of these are going to be politically based, there's different rules and regulations and different pitfalls that we have to avoid there and treat a lot differently. So we're on top of it when we find out about it. We ask for licenses. We've gone out to a location this past 2 weeks, probably at least 6 to 7 times to enforce our regulations. And we continue to do that, but I'm open to listening to any discussion on if you want to change it, if you have concerns, or how we want to address either transient merchants, peddlers, or food trucks.
So, Madam Mayor, can I jump in? So I was one of the folks that emailed Karen about this, if we could add it to the agenda, because I got so many calls and emails about this last week and from other businesses. And this is super helpful, what you've provided in terms of what's a solicitor, what's a peddler, what's a transient merchant, and that we don't have an ordinance around food trucks. I guess my concern, I happened to be at another business when I saw some enforcement happen. And so what my question is how do we enforce? Do we enforce equitably across all? Do we, and I don't care if they're selling rainbows and unicorns, but I mean, are we being equitable? And then also, I noticed Donovan and then Chief Peterson having to go out and do this. And so it started making me think about the budget, and is that the best use of their time? Because then it also made me think, I was getting lots of calls about that, but I'm also getting lots of calls around people not cutting their grass, cars, junky yards. And do we want Donovan to be going out and telling people to mow their lawn? I mean, is that the best use of his time when he's supposed to be, our planning person? And so it just made me think, and I just thought I wanted to just discuss it, especially as we're moving into budget, and also Chief Peterson. I mean, is that the best use of his time?
So let me respond to some of that. There's a lot of stuff there. So let me get back to that. Your first point was, do we enforce equitably? Yes, absolutely. That we strive to treat everybody the same, no matter what they sell. Like you said, rainbows or unicorns.
Right.
A license is a license, a peddler is a peddler, a transient merchant. So we don't make any discrimination there. Do we enforce it well? Do we enforce it often? Do we have the resources to enforce it the way we should? No, absolutely not. We don't.
Okay.
We haven't. I don't know where that's been in the past, but I would tell you no. We don't have that right now. We enforce on a complaint basis only. We're not out there searching for the junk cars, the junk yards, or anything like that. We just don't have the resources to do that. Is it the best use of Donovan's time? Absolutely not.
No.
He should be a planner and be working on planning and zoning stuff, and not, for a person in that position who he should be doing his professional things and not these other things. It should be a different person or a different classification of an employee. We have enough problems, or not problems, we have enough issues getting through planning issues, zoning issues, getting plan commission stuff ready, getting zoning complaints solved, getting development agreements. Now, Donovan should be focusing on that kind of stuff instead of enforcement. Is it the best use of Chief Peterson's? Absolutely not. But again, we have who we have. There are a number of different models in different cities that use a whole gamut of different ways to have this enforced. If you look at the police department, you have community service officers that go out and do not only enforcement, but the other things that the police assign them, traffic control and other, minor accident reports. So that's a way to look at it. You have actually ordinance enforcement people that just enforce different portions of the ordinance. As a matter of fact, every summer forever, I don't know how long Donovan had it, we hire a summer intern to do just that, is to look at zoning and planning and whatever enforcement's out there, because we have plenty of it. We have plenty of complaints. We just don't have the time or the resources to do it. So I would say our inspection program, our enforcement program with zoning ordinances, with garbage yards, with fire inspections, with any of that stuff needs to be looked at. But as the age-old problem, as we just talked about with the lake people, is how much do you spend and can your budget afford to do that? So, yeah, we could use an enforcement person, that, even if it's just part-time from May till October, that's usually when enforcement's at its highest anyways. It slacks off in the winter because snow covers a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad things, so people don't call. So at least if you're talking about, and I think you're kind of getting to that, what resources do we need? At a minimum, we would need to employ somebody in the summer months, probably April, May, June, probably through the end of October to do something. And I think we could keep them busy. We can look at it being run out of the building department. We can look at running out of with Donovan's office or my office, or we can look at community service officer position, which has been mentioned in the past. Again, it's just a matter of how much it's going to cost us. If they have the time, if they're well used and they have enough complaints to justify the position, which I would argue they probably do, and then getting it all together. So I hope that answers most of what you need.
That answered all of it. Thank you. And it was just, it made me start thinking about it as we, are we using, is this the best use of city funds to pay them to do this work when it could be happening? And I agree, maybe it is just, it's not full year, because it seems like these calls come, this is the second summer that I've experienced that this is when the call comes. And in terms, I just wanted to say, in terms of the actual pop-up sales or whatever, I almost would want, and I don't know if it's appropriate, Dan and Mayor Bain, but the downtown beautification, is that something that they can talk about there in terms of, where those are located, or there seems to be a concern just in general that I'm hearing.
Well, and I don't think you want to focus on whether it can be downtown or not. I think you need to focus on if you're going to restrict locations, if that's the case for pop-ups or for food trucks, you do it at a citywide basis. Because do you want them in your parks? No, they're probably already not allowed in the parks. But the other thing, getting back to enforcement just for a moment, is that the secret to enforcement, and you'll find this if we ever go down this road and have an enforcement person, it has to be the right person and the right attitude, because people will be mad and you'll get just as many calls about enforcement than the ones complaining about enforcement. So it's really kind of an approach thing. And I would argue that if we have an enforcement person, it shouldn't be somebody with a gun or a badge. It should be somebody with a polo shirt and have an approach that is trying to get compliance and trying to work with them and not being confrontational, because that just runs you and you'll just get as many calls as you do now. So,
I'd like to also add something. This is Donovan. There are food truck, draft ordinance that a previous deputy clerk did create in 2017, and it was modeled after a Cottage Grove rules at that time. So that, again, it's creating more rules for further, enforcement, and of course requiring, more staff to enforce. But I also say that we do hire summer interns, and I think they're really effective at creating, you know, getting those enforcement letters out and responding to these situations.
I too was just inundated, as you well know, with email.
As were we.
Yeah, I know, you know, about this. And, you know, it just made me pause a little bit and kind of reflect back on a couple of years ago, actually, when I was, you know, had kind of made an announcement that I was going to be running for city council. And I had one of our local businesses pop in and have a conversation with me about this very issue and how it, you know, certain businesses that are allowed to open up, you know, in this pop-up fashion, pull business away from our established businesses in the community who pay taxes in this community. And is that right? And so when I think about this kind of more broadly, you know, do we need to have a conversation about what's allowable and what isn't allowable in the community more broadly? I don't know. I think that brings us kind of back to that whole enforcement piece again. But is this a bigger conversation? I don't know. Again, what's the vision for the community? How are we ensuring that we're supporting our businesses that are here and are paying taxes, and, you know, having, you know, an entity come in and set up for a few months and pull a tremendous chunk of resources away from them? Is that right? You know, is that fair to them as business owners in the community? I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess. I'm not sure I know the answer myself, but maybe it is worthy of a broader conversation. You know, I'm not picking on one political party or another, but maybe that's just across the board. I don't know. It's something that's not allowable within the city. I'm not sure. But
yeah,
question of maybe note of clarification. Under our transient rules, we are talking about periods of less than 14 days, right? Because they aren't able to establish shop for longer than 14 days. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I just have to refresh my memory.
Yes.
Because I share those concerns if we're allowing for a something to be temporary, but it's actually of more permanence. I think the question is, what's the right level of regulation for something that is intended to be a very short transactional? This is in the moment period of time. Because I share your concerns if we're talking about, you know, allowing 8 weeks or, you know, 2 months of revenue. I share that concern, but 14 days where it really is just a pop-up. And, you know, there's a host of reasons why that, you know, can be advantageous. There's a timing of this that I'm a little concerned about, just in terms of that there's times when we add more regulation and there's times where we don't. And we're in this COVID model where businesses are struggling, and we've done all sorts of things to try to loosen restriction. And I'm not sure if this, I'm not sure if this is the business climate to add restriction. That would be a reason. There's a timing consideration here where I just think we're in a unique time. It does impact also my thoughts on, you know, like food trucks are maybe a good example of the right, you know, the right climate for that. You know, as long as we're comfortable that health and safety are covered by state and county, you know, level of control, and if we feel like that is adequate, you know, current business environment, us adding another layer of regulation on food trucks, I'm kind of in the camp of I don't think it's the right time. I know a former clerk was, you know, a couple of years ago putting together some draft regulation. You know, I was interested in taking a look at it. Timing's everything here, and I'm just not sure that it's the right climate to add that layer. specifically to food trucks. And
Well,
then is there a need for things that are less than 14 days? I like that we've got the requirement for a background check. I like that we know who's doing business in our community. There's some good things in the existing guidance. I don't know if I have heartburn of something, allowing something for a 14-day period.
My opinion on the food trucks, I like food trucks personally, but there's a couple of them that are pretty well camped out in Forest Lake. And they're not a transient. They don't come in once a week. They're here pretty much 7 days a week. And to the earlier comment, we have restaurants in town that are probably not getting a sale because these food trucks are getting a sale. I'm not necessarily all about regulation, but some type of how often can they be here might be something we want to look at down the road.
We do, Donovan, is that an enforcement, that particular question, is that an enforcement question? Because I know that they are limited to how many consecutive days they can be at a single location. Do we just have
that's
some?
30 days.
Oh, it is 30 days. And is and that's set in our, we don't have a food truck ordinance, but that is set within our zoning code, is that right?
I think that's county, right, Donovan?
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't think I think we're silent on that.
And then we're relying on county. So if the county's not enforcing the 30-day rule, they might just be in one spot for 45 days or longer.
I mean, you can still allow food trucks, and if there's a rationale for health and safety, mostly safety on our part. I would encourage that more than I would health, because again, we're not a health department. But also, I think if you want to restrict them to a 14 days, similar to a transient merchants, you probably can do that. But I think you might have to have them have a license as well. And that's really the discussion. We don't know they're out there until somebody calls us. If you have a license, you have to have a license to operate, and you can only be there X number of days, and they have to tell us where they're at. It's a simple thing, but again, enforcement is the issue here. So.
Well, and Mayor Bain, I agree that I'd be hesitant to add more regulation to something that we can't already, kind of back to my original, of if we can't enforce it, why do we have it? Because then people learn, like, well, they have that, but they don't really care, or they don't have the time. And that's kind of the message that gets out there. And so, but I also think there should be at some point a larger conversation around it. I just wanted folks to know that there are different, kinds of merchants, and that there is a process at the city, and that people are, and if they're not, it is enforced. But just something to think about in the future of, do we have the right, if we're going to make rules, regulations, we have to be able to enforce them effectively.
So Patrick, can you fill in the gaps a little bit? I know that we had discussed this code enforcement position during last year's budget season. And if I recall, there was I think 3 positions that were maybe proposed: second captain's position at the police department, a parks communication position, and then code enforcement was the 3rd, right?
Yes,
and
that's correct.
And so, and council didn't fund that last year, didn't make that right. Okay.
Correct.
So as I know we're talking budget next week, any sneak preview on kind of where that's falling as far as capacity and staff recommendation for?
Right now, we have not discussed further enforcement in next year's budget. To be quite honest, we're trying to be pretty conservative because we don't know a lot of things right now. We don't know what the state's going to do to shared revenues and things like that. We will look at it again the next couple of days. If I look at it all and included it all or suggested it all, I think the best way to do that is there's a couple of ways to do it. Either you make it part of the building inspection process where we have an extra building inspector and we can kind of do both, have him a building inspector and code enforcement position, or we create a part-time position, because again, I think that it's more effective right now. I've been through this before. Code enforcement definitely drops off the table when it starts to get cold and snowy. So it really truly is almost a part-time position, or at least a seasonal position. And I think that's something we can look at. Donovan's been very successful in having an intern do that, but that person doesn't always come until what I think July this year, or whatever it may be. So I think we need to start earlier, try to find a person who will come back year after year, or somebody who needs a part-time job or is looking for a second job that can fill in. So that's the way I would approach it, one of those two ways. I don't think we're ready in the police department for a civilian officer yet. I'm not sure we have the need for that. I totally agree, actually, that we should go that way. Civilian officers do a lot to relieve police departments and police officers from some of the duties that they could be focusing on other things. But right now, budgets are tight, and I'm not sure if we can afford as much as we want. So my recommendation would be looking at it part-time or incorporating it somehow in another position.
I do think, though, that it's important to have it all on paper. I mean, I think it's important to have these are the needs. These are the needs heading into 2021. This is what we've identified, and then we have to start prioritizing that list of needs. But I think it's really important to have those needs out in front of our community, out in front of us as a council, and out in front of our community as well. They can see the direction that we're headed. They can start kind of wrapping their head around some of those things that we need. And we can start having conversations with our community about those needs and what that tax impact is going to look like.
Well, absolutely, and I agree entirely. And while we're working on the 10-year plan, I'm not sure it's going to be part of this early budget discussion, but we've identified a lot of different needs in that, and a lot of expenses that, we've asked for, we've identified a lot that's, streets and public works buildings and new employee positions. And we've gone through and, I'll give it to you right now. We've asked the departments to identify what they think they need in the next 10 years. And I've got 35 positions that have been identified. Now, whether we need them all or not, or whether that's going to be the case, or that's based on growth, that's the analysis we have to do internally. I would be foolish to come to you and say, I need 35 positions in the next 10 years. That's just not going to happen. But we do have a lot of needs for positions, strategic positions, that we will identify when we get to publishing the 10-year plan, and we will prioritize what we believe those are. And part of it is a code enforcement issue. I mean, we have a code enforcement issue. We don't have the resources to do it the way we should do it. That's an issue that's going to be identified.
And we do hear that from our community quite a bit. We do get code enforcement complaints from our community quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or feedback, so.
Well, and again, it's how we get back to the priorities. Is that more important than having another police officer? Is that more important than having a building inspector? And
right.
I think it's important. I just think we have to figure out how to do it. And again, I think that we can do it without busting the budget in some manner. So after all that, I need your direction on what you want us to do. Do you want us to look at, the chapter 113, the peddlers and the transient, and do you want us to look at food trucks? Do you want, how much do you want us to look at code enforcement? What's all of it, none of it, some of it, because we can start on all of it. It's just a matter of getting to start on it and making sure that you guys are on board that we are going to look at food trucks, for example, and how we should be regulating them more or less, depending on what you think.
I guess my, Mayor Bain, Patrick, my ask would be, it was really around the budget as we're planning, and kind of what Councilmember Bystrom said is, can we lay it out, sort of like when you lay out your family budget and we want all of this, but okay, let's start prioritizing. Because I too think that the community one, if they're going to continue to make these calls, then we can turn around and say, well, you know what, in order for us to do something about it, we need to be able to have the right staff. And earlier, I hope, Donovan, I can't see you, but I hope you know, I think you do an incredible job with your job, which is why I'm trying to protect the professionalism of it. And same with you too, Chief Peterson. It's just,
thank you.
Like, how do you get your job done when that's what you're doing? I guess was my question. So my ask would be around that in terms of like the adding regulations. I mean, this is just me, my own personal. I don't know if now is the right time to do that. But I think it's a conversation in the future. You know, if we ever go back to a whatever normal is.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I think a comparative analysis isn't a bad idea. What are other cities doing? I mean, how are they kind of managing some of these issues? Is there a good model out there? I don't know. I just think about that business owner all the time. I'm paying taxes in this community. Yet, somebody can come in and in a few short weeks take a significant amount of revenue away from me, and that just doesn't feel right to me. So I just I reflect on that conversation a lot, I don't want to jump off the regulation deep end either, but I think there's a balance.
Agree. Pete, do you have some perspective based on kind of how our existing regulations kind of line up with state statute and other communities that you represent? And I know this is asking you off the top of your head. Do you have any off the top of your head perspectives to share on how we might line up just broadly on this topic?
Mayor Bain, members of the council, if the topic is broadly code enforcement and how the ordinance that you have in front of you tonight lines up, first of all, it does line up well with state law. It is a relatively common set of regulations that you'll see in many communities. The off the top of my head response about food trucks is I do think different communities have different sensibilities about them and how they want to do them. Whether they want to take a strong position or, well, strong, I guess that depends also in what way you're looking at it. So I don't think that there is a state-of-the-art best practices that cities have come up with and we figured it out. I think it really is much more of a sense of your community.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Kind of vision related, basically, a little more nuanced and.
Particularly with food trucks. I mean, you go to some communities and they welcome them. They want them in. It's their thing. It's what they do. So others don't want them a bit. It just depends on what your vision, like you said, vision or what your theme is. That they have places that have food truck festivals where they invite all the food trucks in, and so it just depends on what you're really looking at, what you want in your community and where you want it. Do you want it out by the Target or do you want it by the roundabout in downtown? So,
Mayor Bain, members of the council, if I just may add one more note on this. Around the edges, I don't want to get anywhere near them right now, but there are some legal and policy considerations that we would want to look at very carefully around the design of something that was a restriction on commercial activity in the city.
And with that said, you're comfortable that our existing regulations are comfortable within those considerations. You're not seeing anything that pushes on, that's making you uncomfortable with those considerations?
I have no concerns about your current ordinance.
Okay. So direction for staff, if I may, I know Patrick's looking for some direction for next steps. I guess from what I'm hearing, in the near term, there's some interest on seeing how code enforcement lines up with other staffing prioritizations and how that sequencing might play out. Maybe that's a 2021 consideration, but maybe when we look at the totality of that staffing plan, council chooses a different priority sequence. So I think that we'll have some visibility to that here in the next couple of weeks. And then I think it's a broader question related to kind of overall policy setting. Is there something else that we would do around all of these topics from a ordinance consideration? And given Pete's feedback, I think that takes a little bit of a longer term window if we wanted to take some action there. And perhaps I like Councilmember Munson's point on changing ordinance doesn't mean much if we're not enforcing. And so maybe we take that as a 1-2 approach of near term. Let's look at enforcement and how that we might prioritize that coming up in the budget season. And then revisit if we wanted to come back to some of the ordinance considerations based on council feedback and a longer term approach. Thoughts? I see a couple heads nodding. Anybody suggest or prefer an alternate approach?
That looks clear as mud, Patrick.
I'll figure it out, don't worry.
Okay. All right, that is the end of our planned discussion agenda items this evening. Let's move on to staff updates. We'll do Patrick first, followed by Dan.
Yeah, I just have one thing is that you all know that the legislature is going to go back in special session. Just to recap, the last time they were in special session, there was a compromise bill for $1.8 billion for the bonding bill. In that compromise, we were left out of it entirely. I don't know what's going to happen this next time, but if you happen to speak with any of your legislative friends, the bonding bill is going to be back on the table, which I don't know how long this session is going to last. I would hopefully we can encourage them to put at least one of our projects in. I think the best chance, to be quite honest with you, is the sewer project because we match it. I don't think we'll get the $3 million for the bridge, but state likes to have matches. So hopefully we can convince them at least to get one out of the 3 or 4 that we submitted. So that's all I have.
Just to add quickly on that, that's why we lost our public works director tonight. He got a SCADA call and had to leave and go. He's out in the field right now.
You got a what call?
A SCADA call from the communication on the sewer system. An issue they had to go deal with tonight.
If we really could use that funding.
Yeah. Any questions for Patrick this evening? We'll do Dan next and then Pete and Amanda after Dan.
Mayor Bain, can I just jump in?
Yep.
Could Patrick or Ryan or Dave, I'm not sure who, could you provide a summary to council? Just a brief summary, kind of capturing, I mean, kind of this very issue this evening, for example. I mean, just if we can, I can put my own voice to it, but if I have a starting point, it's a little more helpful. I don't know if I'm doing a very good job kind of capturing the full scope of this when I have conversations with Senator Housley or Representative Detmer, but sure. But if you could provide a little bit of a better baseline for me, it would be really helpful, and
sure,
council members as well. Thank
you. As far as the bonding bill, yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Dan, and then Pete and Amanda after Dan.
Just one quick update. Washington County released their small business COVID-19 relief fund program today. So the application for that went live as of this morning, and it'll be live through August 24th. It's a first come, first served program. So if you know of any business in Forest Lake that needs some assistance right now due to COVID-19 impacts, encourage them to apply for this relief program that Washington County released today. I'm currently I will get the link on the website tonight. I'm just wrapping up the post right now, so it will be live on the website. I will also forward the link out to all the council members' email addresses, so I will email that out tonight as well. So feel free to pass that information on to any business that you know of that may be looking for some assistance due to impacts from COVID-19.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan this evening? Seeing none, we'll go on to Pete and Amanda. And after Pete and Amanda, we'll go to Chief Peterson.
Your Honor, council members, we don't have an update for you this evening, but we're happy to take questions.
Any questions this evening? Seeing none, Chief Peterson, and then we'll do Chief Newman after Chief Peterson.
Do not have any updates for you, but if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Chief Peterson? All right, Chief Newman, and we'll do Donovan after Chief Newman.
I do not have anything unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Chief Newman this evening? Seeing none, Donovan, and we'll have Karen after Donovan.
My only update relates to, we have a full Plan Commission agenda on this coming Wednesday with some expansions of local businesses. These are site plan reviews. So I'm happy to see those and happy to take any questions from council.
Any questions for Donovan this evening? Seeing none, Karen.
Thanks, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to comment on is that we have elections tomorrow for the primary. So City Hall is open. They do have curbside voting. You will be asked to wear a mask. It's not a requirement, but people should put them on when they come into the building. They are taking precautions for social distancing. And the county is expecting a lot less people to vote in person. They do have numbers in as far as the primary and the mail-in ballots. So I think those are pretty much in line with what they expected in terms of the percentage. But that's open tomorrow. I think they close, I want to say, well, 9, I think. I'm not exactly sure. And then also anybody filing for local office, that goes all the way through tomorrow until 5 p.m. So if anybody had intentions of filing, you got to come in and get it taken care of by tomorrow. That was all. Any questions?
Any questions for Karen? Seeing none, we will move on to council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Husnick and then do Councilmember Gerard.
Madam Mayor, I have no updates. I attended the EDA meeting tonight, but I'm sure you'll expand on that. And other than that, I don't have any other updates. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Councilmember Gerard?
No updates at this time.
Your Planning Commission has 13 items on their agenda tomorrow night. Thank them in advance for their service. That is a long agenda.
Yes, it is.
Bring some coffee or Starbucks or, wow, that's a marathon.
Yes. I will tell them.
Well, much appreciated. So Councilmember Byström, and we'll do Councilmember Munson.
Just wanted to let everybody know that the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission is going to host their 10-year visioning planning this week. So we'll be looking for some great report outs from them. And then just the citizen communication on the pop-ups, the broadband or the internet communication, and then the safety issue at the roundabout, Broadway and 61 roundabout, the family trying to cross and really struggling to get across, feeling like they're not able to get across safely. So, and And then do we have an update on 97? On the completion?
Sure, Ryan. Ryan, do you have an update on Goodview 97?
As long as weather can hold out, we're shooting for August 21st to reopen up that intersection.
Okay.
Was there an accident this morning that followed up kind of the detour and was that an awkward situation, or is?
I didn't hear
anyone
of
aware of?
anything. Maybe Chief can comment on that.
Chief, you might be on mute. Right. We can pass. Okay. Kathy, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Munson.
No specific update other than the citizen communication, and also spoke to the family at around the pedestrian crossing, and just reminding people that in there that they do have to stop, and just because I think there's a lot more people out walking, and just being mindful of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Just a couple of quick updates. We had an EDA meeting right before this. We reviewed 2021 budget items and priorities, which kind of was a direct tie into our 2021 work plan. We reviewed the next layer of planning related to the business retention and expansion program that we are getting ready to relaunch with the chamber, and we are still targeting a September launch for that. And as Dan mentioned, the Washington County CARES Act grant applications opened up today. And so good to get the word out on that. It is a 2-week application period. And so a tight turnaround, but a very important program that the county is doing. So thank you to them for that. That is all I have. Anything else this evening? And not seeing anything, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call for adjournment, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And we're adjourned this evening. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.